The Home Secretary was speaking about demonstrations which have been held in the UK in support of Palestinians, and she said this.
You've seen now tens of thousands of people take to the streets following the massacre of Jewish people, the single largest loss of Jewish life since the Holocaust, chanting for the erasure of Israel from the map. To my mind, there's only one way to describe those marches. They are hate marches. What the police have made clear is that they are concerned that there's a large number of bad actors who are deliberately operating beneath the criminal threshold in a way which you or I, or the vast majority of British people, would consider to be utterly odious.
Her comments came after 5 people were charged because they'd attended the pro-Palestinian protest in London at the weekend and various other reasons as well. People have said calling these hate marches is disingenuous, dangerous and deeply contradictory to the right to protest. All right, so we're back where we were a few minutes ago. Let's tackle this. Narinder, what do you think? A hate march?
I think she's such a dangerous woman. And to call, how many people were there? 300,000, 500,000, 5 arrests. And she's calling the rest of the hundreds of thousands of people who went there for peace, to call for peace. And she's saying that that's a hate march. That's hate march where 5 people were arrested. If they were saying hate speech, they've been arrested, done. But you cannot label the rest of those people who went there to call for the ceasefire, the killing of innocents. Look, that's peaceful. I was there at the first one. There was people with prams, there were families there. And she's calling that a hate march.
James, what do you think? Is she wrong?
I think she's wrong to call the whole of the march hate march, because there are a lot of people who absolutely correctly want to give their support to Palestinian people who are innocent, who are being caught up in this. And if you wanted to listen, I would say that any loss of life, I don't care whether they're Palestinian or Israeli or anybody else, in any conflict is a horrendous state. And when you see those personal stories, you see those tragedies, it is awful. And anybody who wants to
any loss of life of anyone,
anybody who's seeking to protest and wanting to have peace, then I'm all up for it, because we have a nation where freedom of protest is there. However, where I think she is right is that there is a distinct element of these marches where hate is being allowed to proliferate. And for example,
it doesn't. They're not. But when,
no.
1,000 people.
Let me finish. But when people are saying from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free, I don't think you or some people understand.
That's a few people.
Yes, exactly.
And you're going to get a few bad apples.
Fine. So
you
those
can't
are
label an entire protest.
That's what I was saying.
All right.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
So the people who are protesting and asking for intifada and jihad and all this sort of business, and indeed from those sorts of inflammatory comments, those are the elements of the march that I would like to see taken out.
All right.
The rest of it.
She said some of them were deliberately operating just below the criminal threshold. You could watch that and think, oh, so they were deliberately obeying the law. That's what that means. So deliberately operating just below the criminal threshold sounds to me like they didn't do anything wrong.
Right,
I'm not quite sure what she's
and I also think her language is actually inflammatory. Her language does cause hate.
Well, let's see. Sophie in Bedford, do you think she has the right to say this?
No, I don't at all. And she understands the impact of her statement, and it only serves to fuel the fire and the division between the Palestinians and Israelis. And the fact that she said it's anti-Semitic is just, she's trying to push this narrative about the protest when really everyone's there just to, raise awareness and stand against the government who are pushing for this war in Gaza.
Sophie.
Go on, James.
Sophie, I think there is a point here, though, is that when people are chanting from the river to the sea, and when they're talking about intifada, and when they're talking about jihad, there are people there who are genuinely seeking the end of Israel as a country. They don't wish to see it anymore, and stoking anti-Semitism. So I think we have to be aware that that is a prevalent part. I think the way she phrased it is wrong, but I think to think that it isn't happening in our country. You speak to anybody who's Jewish up and down the country, they will tell you that anti-Semitism has risen.
The target slightly, because all we know is it's about 100,000 people on this march, and there were, I think I heard 5 arrests. I mean, that's almost a record-breakingly peaceful march, James, isn't it?
Well, it may be, but I think it's also...
because people who are Jewish in this country feel threatened by it.
They absolutely do.
What about Muslim people in this country? They feel threatened. It's always about Jewish people feeling threatened. So are Muslim people feeling threatened. It's both ways. You can't have compassion for one and not for the other.
Sophie, did you go on the march?
No, I didn't. But in hindsight, I wish I had done because, looking at the death toll in Gaza and seeing the amount of children that are being bombed by this, I wish I had gone in support of them because I think, the news, the Home Secretary, everyone's trying to sort of push this view that, we need to fight against Hamas and it's anti-Semitic and but I think that, no one's there's complete disregard for people in Gaza.
I've got to get another call in. Thank you, Sophie. Thank you so much. Not cutting you off. Just want to get another call in. Louise in Hampshire, hi.
Hi.
Go ahead.
I just think it's all disingenuous. It is not anti-Semitic to criticise Israelis' use of force in Gaza. It is not. And it's just... I agree that what Hamas did on October the 7th was horrific. It was a terrorist attack. But what Israel are doing to Gaza now is they're just bombing them out of existence. And, James, I take issue with you saying, you people. I am not a Muslim. If anything, I would say I was an atheist. I am not you people, but I do think the Israeli government, not a ceasefire, well, yes, maybe a ceasefire, but they should allow aid in, because all you're doing is you're killing women and children, and yeah, they stamp Hamas out of existence. But don't you really think that somebody else will rise up in the place?
James, answer that.
Because all you're doing is making children.
That's a different argument.
I agree, Louise, that certainly it's not anti-Semitic to think that Israel is wrong. If you wish to think that, then that's so be it. But I think you need to understand why it is that they are seeking to take the action that they're taking. That this is they say that a war has been started, and you don't stop a war by having a ceasefire with somebody who's just going to rearm and then start.
But you stop water being given to children. You give dogs water, but you've stopped water going into for children and women.
But you see,
you give dogs water. Yes. That's a disgrace. I mean, how can you accept that, James?
Well, it's not a question of accepting it, but it's a question of simply if you have a look at any kind of war which takes place, you don't start supplying your enemy with the supplies.
Children with water.
But it's not. I mean, Israel's argument is that when you let water and power in, it goes to Hamas. I'm just repeating their argument.
That's a weak. Well, it's not a weak argument because if you think about your pounds, your money, your donations, and our donations to the Palestinian people. We thought that we were making sure that the lives of ordinary Palestinians would be improved. No, that money, that fuel, that energy, that water, that everything was taken by Hamas and is now ending up in rockets which still are being piled at Israel and Israelis. So it's a war to be won.
We'll take a break. We're asking whether Thank you, Louise, by the way, for your call. And we're asking whether Suella Braverman was wrong to call pro-Palestinian demonstrations hate marches, given that there was a tiny, minuscule number of arrests.